Apparently because I'm addicted and have nothing better to do. That's not a good way to put it. Nothing wrong with loving Netrunner. Alright, let me make sure I've got everything set up here. Anyway, how unprofessional of me. Greetings. Tonight we're going to continue looking at Netrunner games. If you see your game posted here and you'd like me to not spectate your games in the future, just let me know. Otherwise, no need for further ado. We know what we're getting into. Let's just start watching some good NR games tonight. First game of the night is Steve Cambridge versus Hyobu Institute. Hyobu, not one you see very often. In fact, I think this may be the first game I've ever seen Hyobu even used at all. It was the first Jinteki Nisei ID, or I should say Nisei Jinteki ID, that attempted to synergize with some of the weirder Jinteki cards they released during the Downfall cycle, as well as Uprising. The first time each turn you reveal a card, gain a credit. And then you have this click ability, reveal a card from your grip at random or the top card of the stack. It's so weird, but we'll have to see how the core plans to utilize this ID to its fullest. Cambridge, of course, is pretty self-explanatory. He runs into HQ and gets to pull back one of two cards from archives. Currently we have a Marjana, which is the new Fractor coming out of Criminal. Penny Shaver is just good, and then prepaid voice pad to make those run events, or just events in general, cheaper. Lacosta Grid, used to fast advance a sandbox. It's a nice card to have, especially if Criminal wants to run any kind of tranquilizer strategies. Bugalter dropped by Crim. So two of the ice types covered. And enough money to at least use each once, you would assume. Unless they run into something like a Chiashi. 2 credits to break 1 barrier subroutine. That's kind of rough. Of course, it's only 1 credit if a successful run was made already during the turn. The 0 install cost is probably how that's mostly offset. 0 install cost is pretty good. Doesn't get much better than 0. Anyway, a Tread Lightly run into HQ. It's going to increase the res cost of anything in front of HQ by 3 credits. Hyobu decides to go ahead and res this ice anyway. It is an engram flush. Pretty cheap in the first place. So 5 credits to res. Engram revealing all cards from the runner's grip twice. Hardware was named. However, there's no hardware in this hand at all. I don't know why you name hardware against Crim. I would say you would want to name well, no, sorry, Boomerang is a hardware. Maybe that was the idea. Wanted to snipe the Boomerang. I think in general, though, you would name event or resource, depending on what you were reading. This doesn't seem to be a resource-intensive deck, and it's Criminal, who you would expect to run a lot of run events anyway. But, Cambridge goes ahead and lets that fire because they're willing to ditch the Boomerang. In a way, you would use a Boomerang to break Engram Flush anyway. It's just this way they didn't have to install it. So they pitch the Boomerang, get an HQ. Looks like they see a celebrity gift. Grifter adds some card back to their hand. I really wish the interface would correctly represent this. Perhaps that's something that the wonderful people running Jinteki.net will eventually fix. So we're not quite sure what card they added back to their hand. It is added to the hand, right? Yeah, the grip. Anyway, the corp ended up just drawing a card and then using Celebrity Gift to reveal their hand. So we see a flower sermon, so an agenda, another 2 more Lacosta grids. So all the Lacosta grids are accounted for. Lotus Field, nice piece of ice. And Tithe. There's 1 agenda in HQ. The runner, however, just seems to set up further, drops Rozeki and Abigail. Back over to the corp. A 3rd piece of ice protecting the remote. All 3 unresed at this current time. And a mystery card in server 1. You have to think, do they have the money to res all the ice on here? We know that one of those is probably a Lotus, and the other is probably a Tithe. Tithe is pretty cheap. Just 1 credit to res. Lotus Field costing 5. So they would have enough money to res either of those, especially the Tithe. Tithe really isn't going to stop a runner, though. It's just a net damage and a credit. Wisely, Cambridge runs R&D. Said it a million times, but you always run where you don't want to run first. So you run R&D assuming that the corp wants to protect this remote. So theoretically, if they want to protect the remote, they're not going to have the money to res R&D and the remote ice. So they might actually just let you into R&D for free, which is what happened. Oh, and that's a pretty powerful tread lightly. Going straight into the remote. That's going to increase the res cost of all of this ice by 3. I would not be surprised if the corp simply lets Cambridge in here. Corp cannot afford a 9 credit increase on the server, and indeed, Cambridge just walks right in, steals the flower sermon, accesses the Lacosta, and trashes it. It's a little frustrating that the Lacosta is trashed. It is a 3 res cost, but we know that the corp has 2 more in HQ, so those can be replaced, or even baited out, pretending to be agendas. Maybe an actual agenda will go into the server, although we see 2 different 4-2s, so if the corp only runs 4-2s, it's doubtful that they'll install something without a Lacosta grid. The never advance game plan may not be there. 2 cards go into server 1. We have to assume that one of them is a Lacosta. Perhaps there are just 2 Lacostas in server 1. Maybe trying to bait out a run here. An inside job is used on the server. Corp can res this ice at normal price now, though. Lotus Field on the outside. Inside job bypasses that. Tithe, the middle piece of ice, is going to go ahead and be broken by Bugalter, since Bugalter pays the money that is used to break the ice back. And then a barrier. So resing Tithe may not have been the best idea, since it didn't cost the corp the runner anything to break that. Palisade, though, is going to cost actual credits. 5 credits from Marjana. So that one was pretty good, especially because Marjana, I think, it was 2 credits to break the end of the run. Why did it cost 5? You boost by 2. What? Why was Palisade? Oh, because Palisade gets +2 strength when it's on a remote server. Nice, nice. Okay. Anyway, gets into the server and sees A Nisei Mark II. And a Lacosta. Can't afford the trash cost of the Lacosta, or doesn't want to afford it, especially because the Corp hasn't invested the money to res it yet. Although it's a bit of a catch-22. If the Corp invests the money to res the Lacosta, they've already gotten the use out of it. But I think that's wise because if Cambridge trashes the Lacosta, there's just a third Lacosta that's coming right back into that server. Anyway, the Nisei score very good. This is our third unique 4-2, so this deck is probably exclusively running 4-2s. The Corp installs another mystery card in server 1, clicks for 2 credits. Back over to the runner, we see an jailbreak run into R&D. Saisentan is rezzed, but it's not going to be too much trouble for Begalter to break. I think it's 4 credits plus 2 credits back, so really only 2 credits on the first break. We're getting into R&D and seeing an unknown card and a flower sermon, that extra access coming from jailbreak. So Cambridge now on game point. Of course, any successful run is going to be useful. This is going to trigger Penny Shaver. It's going to turn on Marjana. And the draw from Jailbreak, because Jailbreak does draw you a card, also triggering the class act. Hyobu has nothing to do but click for 3 credits. They use their ID ability to gain 1 credit. Oh, I totally misread this. They reveal a card from the grip. The grip, of course. The grip is very different from HQ. So they reveal one of the runner's cards at random. That makes a lot more sense. Kind of, they get to take a quick peek. Wow. I was going to say, why would you ever want to reveal a card in HQ? Now that all credibility has been lost from my knowledge of Netrunner. That makes a lot more sense. So it's kind of like you get to click for a credit due to your ID ability, but it's all for naught. The runner's able to get into the remote server due to an overclock. Frankly, I think they probably could have gotten in even without the overclock. And they steal the last agenda. The second Cyberdex. Okay, so unfortunately we didn't get to see a lot of what Hyobu actually wanted to do here. We see... So Engram Flush does trigger Hyobu's ID ability. Saisentan does not. Neither does Palisade, Tithe, Lotus Field. There's really not a lot of what we saw here that synergizes. Celebrity Gift does. You get an extra credit from Celebrity Gift. You get an extra credit from the Engram reveal. And I think they got a credit when they used their ability to take a look at the runner's hand. I think the problem is, wouldn't you just rather play Polana? Is Polana still legal? Let's check that out real quick. Polana Foods? Or is it Agroplex? That's Foods. Yeah, it's still legal. At least according to... Yeah, because it came out in Mumbad. Like, if the Corp had just played Polana, they would have made the same amount of money, if not more. Unless you're using Hyobu's reveal a card ability like that click reveal a card from the grip at random or the top card of the stack. So they get to see the top card of the opponent's. Unless you're actively using those abilities, I think there's no reason to play Hyobu over Polana, because Polana could have did this exact same thing, and they would have been richer doing it. Palisade. I like Palisade. That's nice. 3 credits for 4 strength ice. It's only good for scoring, though. Bad for protecting the centrals. Tithe. Tithe makes me feel... I'm not sure about Tithe. Not in this deck. I don't think Tithe is a bad piece of ice. I think it's a good piece of ice, especially in a deck that doesn't care if the runner gets in. I am definitely putting Tithe in my Black Tree deck. But all of this ice is porous except for Lotus Field, which means as long as the runner can get through Lotus Field, every single agenda that goes into the server is going to get stolen. Because it's very obvious what the strategy is. It's just use Lacosta, score 4 2s. It's not terribly complex. Or really complex at all. And because of that, you know anytime there's going to be 2 cards in the server, the runner's going to go in and check it. Lotus Field is... I mean, it's a 4 strength code gate. It's not bad. It's expensive to res, though. And it kind of had its heyday back when Parasite was more of a thing. Since Parasite is no longer in the meta. Or even legal, for that matter. It came back during Salvage Memories. But I don't think it's... I think it died. Yeah. Salvage Memories and bust. Sansan, I believe, stuck around, though, didn't it? Yeah. It's in the 2021 system update. Sansan, I think, might have been the only one that lived through the Salvage Memories update. Yeah, I think if you're going to use this strategy, if this is going to be your whole strategy, you need better ice. I guess Palisade ends the run. I don't know why I didn't look at Palisade and think that it ends the run. But why Lotus Field? What are you trying to prevent here? What's so scary that you don't want the... Because this just could have been another Palisade, and it would have been cheaper to res. 2 credits cheaper, that's pretty... It's a pretty big difference. I mean, it does force a decoder out. So I guess it's a different type. What are some good code gates out of Jinteki? Oh, wrong button. I forget how to do this. Oh, advanced, doy. Let's do, Jinteki, ice. Could we do code gate? Is that one of the options? Oh, it is. Nice. Man, NDB is so cool. Okay, what are... So we'll organize it by set or release date. That's probably good enough. Diviner. I don't think anyone's used this card ever. Do 1 net damage. If you trash a card with a printed plate or install cost that is an odd number, end the run. Oh, this is a new one. Okay, that's why we haven't seen it. Weird. Engram Flush is pretty good, but it's porous. We're looking for... Thimble Rig ends the run, but you're not using it to be a huge roadblock, obviously, with 0 strength. I think DNA Tracker, but DNA Tracker is super expensive, and it also doesn't technically end the run. I don't know if there really are a lot of hard end the run code gates. Code gates aren't really known for ending the run. They're known for taxing the runner. So maybe that's why the Lotus Field was used as another hard end the run that forces the decoder out. Alright, Valencia versus Built to Last. I feel like this is becoming a common matchup. The Corp starts off their first turn by double advancing a hostile takeover. Valencia takes a turn to set up daily casts, dirty laundry somewhere. Apparently doesn't see anything useful, and drops Poemu. Wayland also getting set up. Ice's R&D creates a new remote and puts a card in the remote. It's just a wall-to-wall, though. Leaving HQ open like this either shows you that there are no agendas in HQ, or they're just not worried about Valencia stealing them, or they're bluffing. But I would say that typically if you had a bunch of agendas in HQ, you'd probably ice HQ. Card in server 3, install double advanced. Wall-to-wall adds a token to the ice on R&D, in addition to gaining a credit and drawing a card. Back over to Valencia. Valencia has to decide how she wants to start dismantling what the Corp is doing. Throws out a Friday chip. But no good programs to host the virus token from Friday chip until Botulus hits the table. Botulus, kind of a nice little icebreaker. AI, not AI. Colossus res. Now, Colossus would be very threatening, especially Colossus with 3 advancement tokens on it. It's a very terrifying piece of ice in those circumstances. However, he does have 2 subroutines, which means one of those subroutines is going to fire. Botulus used to break the give the runner a tag subroutine, which means it's going to fire the trash 1 installed program. No, I misread that. I was going to say that doesn't make any sense. The trash 1 installed program was broken. The give the runner a tag was not. So the runner's able to get into server 2, trashes wall-to-wall, gets a Friday chip token. That'll probably go right back to Botulus at the beginning of their next turn. They do have a tag, so the Corp installs a new card in server 2, creates a new remote in server 4, and pays 2 credits to trash Poemu. That makes sense. Poemu just generates so much wealth for the runner over the course of the game. Especially because Poemu already had a credit on it. I think it was going to get another credit on the next turn. This is going to set Valencia back a little bit. It does set the Corp back, though, as well. Corp only has 4 credits. But depending on what these face-down cards are, that could be a completely reasonable thing to do. Some of these could be Rashida. Some of these could be NGO Front. However, the Hippo dropped by Valencia is going to allow Botulus to break Colossus and trash the ice. Now, in the process, Valencia does lose her own Botulus, but I think that's a condition she's willing to accept. It is revealed the card in server 4 is actually just a Spin Doctor. That's rezzed, draws a Corp 2 cards. Another hostile takeover. Scored out of hand. Giving Valencia 3 bad pub. That's a lot of free money per run. That's a lot of free money per run. She runs R&D, sees another Colossus. Colossus is going to get to fire all subroutines. Valencia loses the Rozeki, but I don't think she really cares. Or I should say that it's not the end of the world, because this bad publicity credit money is going to be worth each run more than a single Rizeki. So she might not even need the Rizeki credits. Gets into R&D, sees a global food initiative, scores it, has to decide now how she wants to move forward. Does she fear the punitive, or does she fear... I don't know. What would you fear from one tag these days? Perhaps an exchange of information? Anyway, it's a tough choice, because if it's punitive, you would want to keep the tag and click up for credits. If it's exchange of information, then shaking the tag makes sense. Whatever Wayland's sneaky strats are for the when the runner has a tag, none of it was realized, as they instead simply put an ice in front of HQ, in addition to installing a new card and a remote. It is revealed that the card in Service 6 is just a Spin Doctor. That goes ahead and gets used. No chance for Imp to trash that. What did Imp trash, though? Because Imp only has one virus token. Oh, I see. One of the cards in the servers was a Spin Doctor, and then Valencia made another run. No. Valencia ran a server, trashed a Spin Doctor. That's confusing. There were two Spin Doctors, guys. That's the moral of the story. There were two Spin Doctors. Valencia trashed one of them with Imp, and the Corp used the other one. Valencia moves Friday chip tokens over to Imp, as well as dropping a Botulus. Wayland decides their best course of action at this point is just to purge virus tokens. Not the worst idea ever, considering just how many tokens were on the table. But it is going to give Valencia an entirely another turn to kind of catch back up with the Corp. She clicks for credits 3 times and draws a card. Wayland reinforces R&D with another piece of ice, knowing that the Botulus is going to be able to make short work of Colossus as far as breaking goes. Advances the ice that they just installed in front of R&D, but then also advances Colossus, which is a little weird. Botulus doesn't need to interact with strength. A big reason why Colossus gets so scary is not only does its subroutines gain extra effects, but really what makes it so powerful is it gains strength per advancement token on it. But Botulus ignores that. So I don't know if there's going to be much value gained from that extra advancement token. Now, Valencia runs archives and finds a sneaky global food that was stashed away in archives. But in spite of the fact that she's stolen 2 5/3s, she only has 4 agenda points, just simply due to global food's ability. A new piece of ice creates a new remote. It is advanced, and a card goes behind it. Valencia has enough money now to sure gamble, up to 9 credits. Has to decide where she wants to go. A little tough. She doesn't have any actual breakers out right now. Could pull the Black Orchestra if needed. Hippo enters play on her last click. It is revealed the card in Server 7 was another wall-to-wall. That's going to give the Corp a bit of tempo, but it's all for naught. And we get our answer now as to why Colossus had been clicked for an advancement token. The strategy was to win with Red Planet Courier all along. Government takeover must have been in HQ. And so out of nowhere, the Corp scores 6 points. All they needed to win. Live by the sword, die by the sword, live by the government takeover, die by the government takeover. In this case, Wayland managed to live. Botcha is pretty frustrating. The Friday Chip Imp combo has been around for a while. That's not even new. That's an FFG creation. So even though it is strong, it's something Corps have been dealing with for a while now. But Botulus adds a whole nother layer of calculations that need to be made. The ability to break Colossus every other turn for free is pretty good. I think what makes Botulus so strong isn't just that it breaks anything, but the fact that it ignores strength completely. Now, of course, it suffers from the same problems that Ika suffered from, in that all the Corp has to do to get rid of it is simply trash the ice. But then you've paid 2 credits and a click to trash one of the Corp's ice, which seems pretty good. It's give and take. There's ways to play around Botulus. It's a good card for sure. But it can't be the runner's only way in. The runner needs other tools, assuming, of course, you've got more than a couple pieces of ice. It was neat to see Hippo used on a Botulus infested ice, because it's almost like a snake eating its own tail there. Yeah, Botulus breaks the ice for practically nothing. Hippo trashes it, getting it off the table for practically nothing. But you lose all the pieces in the process. Hippo, of course, removes itself from the game. Botulus gets trashed. So you've invested 2 clicks and 4 credits and 2 cards into getting rid of 1 piece of ice. It certainly does not seem broken. It might not even be good. I'm not sure. I think it would be circumstantial. Like, in this scenario, getting rid of a Colossus definitely made sense. Getting rid of a Colossus with advancement tokens on it would make even more sense. Perhaps even deconstructing a Surveyor on a 5 ice deep server with Botulus Hippo would make a lot of sense. But you definitely wouldn't want to use that combo against something small. It'd be a lot of investment to get rid of something that didn't cost the Corp very much. Alright. Renee Lou Arkmont. According to Dunch, we pronounce this as Lou. The party animal. Love that face. Who wouldn't love that face? Versus the outfit. The outfit wants to run fast and brash, not caring about any of the bad pub they get. We get a nice ice hedge fund. Party animal. Draws, sure gambles, and draws again. Discarding 2 bin breakers. Pretty good turn 1. Corp responds by creating a new remote. We'll have to see how Renee wants to respond to this. Apparently we're going to get set up. You're going to see the Friday chip combo again. It's been very popular lately. Followed up by a boomerang on the remote and a dirty laundry. We're going clean in. Very confident. No res on the boomerang dice. Accessing server 1. What are we going to see? A Rashida Jaheim. Yeah. You would much rather keep that Rashida, but it's probably not worth protecting. Least of all when there's a boomerang piece of ice. Corp can probably just overwrite that ice and pitch it just to nullify the boomerang. Renee did imp that Rashida just to save the credit. Partially the reason for doing this is that Friday Chip is going to generate more virus tokens, which is just going to feed back into imp. And you see that very thing did indeed just happen. Corp ices archives, perhaps anticipating the need to prevent successful runs in the future from cards like Leech. We've seen a lot of penny shavers. Even out of faction, we've seen penny shavers. Although, we already see 2 influence spent on Boomerang and 1 on Rizeki. We'll have to see what actually has been splashed into with this deck. Liberated, Poemu dropped. It's a lot of setup. That Liberated can be very flexible, giving Renee the credits when he needs them. But the time, no. I was about to say the time is now, except that the card installed in server 1 was actually just a hostile takeover. Gaining the outfit quite a bit of money there. So you have to think, as weird as it sounds, scoring a hostile takeover costs you 5 credits. Because it's 3 clicks to install Advance, and then the 2 advances cost you a credit each. But you gain 7 credits back, plus another 3 from the outfit. So in essence, you're up 5 credits. The outfit installs a 3rd piece of ice on the remote. Perhaps looking for that big scoring window. Oh my goodness, installs a 4th piece of ice. For whatever reason, they might think that this boomerang piece of ice will still be useful, because they haven't overwritten it. Prognostic Q loop enters play, and Renee goes into HQ on his last click. We do see an Enigma. It's going to be broken pretty easily with Black Orchestra. 3 credits to install, 3 credits to break. One of those coming from Poemu. Gets into HQ and sees an SDS drone deployment. That's probably an easy steal, using Black Orchestra as the sacrifice. Indeed. With 13 credits and the Corp only at 12, there's probably not much of a chance of a punitive coming out of that. I don't know what's happening with this server. A 5th piece of ice is installed in this server. It's 4 credits to install. Just to install. And a card goes into the server, advanced once. Overclock. Getting some money to go into this server. What could actually be here? Is it just a surveyor? Is that where the Corp's hopes and dreams are resting? Overclock bypassing... Ooh, an archer. I didn't expect that. But that's still going to be breakable. The Corp forfeiting hostile takeover in order to res that. It does cost quite a bit, though, for MK Ultra to actually break that. Renee gets into the server, sees a Project Atlas, does steal it. So they're up 5-0. So unless they steal a hostile takeover, they're at game point. Archive Memories pulls back a Rashida Jaheim from the bin. That theoretically is what has been installed in Server 1. That makes the most sense. Could be some kind of clever ruse, but even if the Corp did put an agenda in there and scored it on the next turn, they'd be down to 1 credit, which wouldn't be a great place to be. Renee runs back into HQ. It's only 3 credits to get through the Enigma. 2 when you consider the bad pub. Well, and then 3 on the install of Black Orchestra in the first place. But this is also triggering Prognostic Q Loop, where you get to see the 2 top cards of your stack when you run. That part is free, so it's not really that bad of a deal. Accesses a clearinghouse, trashes that with Imp. Renee getting a credit and card draw off that. Rashida was the card in Server 1. Drawing into several cards and gaining a few credits at the same time. Too Big to Fail has been played, handing another bad pub over to Renee, and a 6th piece of ice. You heard me right, my friends. A 6th piece of ice enters play. Protecting Server 1, manually installed, no Ginger Grid there. However, a Hippo and Dirty Laundry into HQ is going to break the Enigma and remove it from the server. Hostile Takeover scored on a follow-up run into HQ. Previously, a border control was accessed and trashed using Imp. Card in Server 1 is triple advanced. It is just a Project Atlas. With HQ being wide open, Renee can trash 1 card each turn with Imp, the Friday Chip Imp combo, and gains a credit and a card draw each time the first turn they do that. So again, that's exactly what we see here. Getting into HQ, seeing a consulting visit, trashing that. Another Hippo is installed, a run on R&D, no res on the R&D ice, getting into R&D, and stealing the last agenda needed. Oaktown renovation of 4-2. What on earth was this Corp doing? Renee played this pretty ruthlessly, and that's certainly what they should have been doing. Not only are they anarch, but the Corp was giving them all the openings they needed to just run away with the game. And this bizarre six piece 6 ice, I'll get it right eventually, 6-piece iced server, where the only thing that was rezzed was an archer. You might as well remove all these pieces of ice. They never mattered. I have to assume that a surveyor is in here somewhere. But even if it was, like, it certainly is a head scratcher. The Archer res was good. MK Ultra is not favorable to break Archer. It's what? 3, 6, 9 credits to break Archer, right? It is not cheap. No, more than that. My goodness. It's 12 credits. Because Archer has 4 subroutines. Yeah, so Archer on its own is almost more than enough to protect a server against MK Ultra. As long as it's not the outermost piece of ice, because then it's going to be hippoed. Didn't really see a lot gained from the outfit's ID ability. Hostile Takeover is kind of a no-brainer in the outfit, but nothing else was really revealed. Too Big to Fail is also pretty much a staple in the outfit. Typically, outfit decks need to run... They either need to run fast and ruthless, or they need to get a ton of money and then blow up the runner. Which I think was what was trying to be done here with this consulting visit. There's probably like a hard-hitting news in the deck. But it was unfortunate that Renee was able to trash the consulting visit with Imp. But even if he hadn't, Renee was never poor compared to the Corp, because the Corp was wasting all their money creating the super server. Another Steve Cambridge versus Restoring Humanity. When your discard phase ends, if there is a face-down card in Archives, gain 1 credit. An interesting concept, but Breached Dome and Shock isn't in the game, so you have to find some other way to disincentivize runs into Archives. Because I really feel like Polana Foods is going to make just as much money otherwise as this deck, as this ID would, but has to try way less hard to do it. We'll have to see. How do you take advantage of needing to put cards face down into Archives? What do you put into Archives to make Archives scary? I really don't know. Cambridge Bravados into HQ past a single piece of unresed ice. Sees a government subsidy, which is the new restructure replacement. Bravado finishes, gaining Cambridge a net of 4 credits. Run into R&D, sees a snare, trashing that for free. Snare cannot be used. No, sorry, snare was used. 4 credits down, but the Corp is more than happy to do that. Definitely going to set Cambridge back quite a bit. Loses the Class Act, Tapworm, and Deuce's Wild. Deuce's Wild could have been used to shake that tag. Nothing really to take advantage of that tag just now, but that's fine. Piece of ice to protect R&D and double click for credits, passing back over to Cambridge. Hot to see how Cambridge wants to recover from this. He's probably not threatened by the tag coming out of Jinteki, so he doesn't need to remove that necessarily right this second. Only needs to remove that if he wants to play valuable resources. Unless, and this is very unlikely, especially in a 40 card deck, unless Jinteki runs some kind of tag punishment. Normally though, Jinteki's IDs don't really care about the tag that Snare gives you. It's just like a bonus effect on top of the net damage. Another Bravado run into HQ. HQ Ice is not res, distract the masses, is accessed. Another Deuces Wild in hand, though. Oh, because Cambridge showed the Tapworm and the Deuces Wild. Afraid of the Tapworm. Tapworm was banned at some point because it was so oppressive. Apparently it's back in the game. Not wanting the Tapworm to be used against them, the Corp chose to give the Deuces Wild back to Cambridge. Corp draws twice and takes a credit. Cambridge goes right into HQ with diversion of funds. Whatever that ice is in front of HQ, it must be expensive, or it must be something the Corp just does not want to res. Because when you're looking at a situation like this, the Corp's going to lose these 4 credits anyway. So if this ice was 4 credits or less, it's almost guaranteed that the Corp would have resed it. So logically, you can deduce that this ice is more expensive than 4 credits. Cambridge again just giving the Corp the choice between 2 cards. One of them was Bravado. I think the Corp had a choice between Bravado and Bravado, is my guess. With a new Bravado in hand, Cambridge just Bravados right into HQ again. Accesses Distract the Masses again, so either it's the same Distract the Masses or the Corp has more than one in hand. So nothing's stolen or trashed. I mean, that's something. But it really sucks because Cambridge has 16 credits. Has basically had to do like nothing to get this money. 4 of it was stolen from the Corp. The Corp takes 2 credits and installs a card in server 1, which is a little odd. What is this card? Cambridge drops Ms. Bones to make trashing cards that much cheaper, in addition to a penny shaver being rewarded for that successful run into remote server 1. Sees a Urtica cipher, which doesn't really do anything if it's not advanced. Oh, except it had 2 advancement tokens on it, right? No, what am I saying? No, it had no advancement tokens on it. That was just a naked Urtica cipher. That seems a little weird. I think you would at least want to advance that once. Might have even killed the runner. Why is Sneak Board... Oh! I misread this. No, this is a pretty strong card. Okay, never mind. No, the Corp totally used this in a way that makes sense. It deals 2 net damage. Just straight up. Plus 1 net damage for each hosted agenda counter. Okay. That was actually kind of scary. And indeed, Cambridge loses Hernando Cortez and Sneak Door Beta. I'm sure they would have much rather had Sneak Door Beta in hand for the surprise Archives run, but it's not meant to be. I think the ice in front of HQ was overwritten, and a new ice replaces it. Corp is up to 6 credits, but Cambridge just diversion of funds did right back in. Palisade, though. Palisade protecting HQ is going to stop that run. That's a good res. That's going to blow a credit, 2 clicks from the runner, in addition to... That's one more diversion of funds down. Wait, who? Who conceded? What? Huh. Alright. The runner was upset that they had... Well, I don't know. Upset is too strong of a word. Unhappy that they had made that mistake. And they concede. They didn't realize that the ice in front of HQ had changed. I feel like, though... I feel like they had this game. The corp is poor. They've got forward tempo on the corp. Penny Shaver is stacking up. Bugalter is already on the table. Yeah, it sucks that you lose the diversion of funds to the Palisade in front of HQ, but I sincerely doubt that Restoring Humanity wanted to put the Palisade there. So it's only a 2 strength barrier in a place that it really doesn't want to be in the first place. I don't know. I think Cambridge could have won this. Could have won this easy. I think this Restoring Humanity player didn't have maybe the most fine-tuned deck. It didn't really seem like we knew what they were doing. They just kind of had a couple random trap cards. We saw an anoetic field. Whenever the runner approaches this server, you may pay 2 credits and trash 2 cards from HQ. If you do end the run, and that kind of synergizes at least with Restoring Humanity's ID ability. It's just crazy to me. This seems like such a weak ability. When your discard phase ends, if there is a face-down card in Archives, gain 1 credit. I almost feel like... I feel like it would be a lot better if it said... Whenever a player's turn ends, gain a credit if there's a face-down card in Archives. So they'd gain a credit, and then if the runner didn't run Archives, they'd gain another credit. That might be too strong, though. We'll have to see if that ID ends up being any good. The last Jinteki ID wasn't really used. I feel like we're only seeing Cambridge and Renee games tonight. We have plenty of games to choose from. We can be a little choosy here. Unfortunately, some of these games are a lot farther along. Yeah, Renee's just a popular guy tonight. Alright, let's watch this Renee game. Jinteki Personal Evolution. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm a little disappointed they didn't put a black tree in this new card art. But this is Jinteki Black Tree. Let's see what fancy things happen here. Oh, apparently this game is over. Oh, because they encountered an Anansi. Anansi is going to deal 3 net damage because all the subroutines aren't being broken. Yeah. Which is going to kill Renee here. They don't have enough money from MK Ultra to actually break it. But the moment they pass the ice, it's a dead runner. For some reason, the runner isn't conceding. There we go. Flatline victory. Seems like Rene is a pretty popular guy tonight. Might have something to do with the fact that I believe the deck of the week features him. Is this the same deck we're seeing everyone using? Yeah, Prognostic Q Loop. Indeed. 1 Knob Curry. 3 Imps. Friday chip, right? Yeah, there's a Friday chip. Well, that explains why we're seeing so much of it. Okay, we're gonna get to see Restoring Humanity again. I guess everyone is probably running the same Rene deck, so at least we know what we're getting into. The strategy seems to be... Oops, why did I keep that? Let's close that window. Yeah, nothing too terribly complicated here. It's just taking advantage of Rene's ID ability in that every time he imps something, he draws a card and gets a credit. And then the rest of this is just good stuff. Prognostic Q Loop. Prognostic Q Loop is the one I don't quite understand. Is there an explanation for this? This is where it gets fun. You can solve 21 targets from your deck with Q Loop. Aside from the 5 bin breakers, most of the time you should. Okay, so it's just used as a tempo card. And the fact of the matter is that Rene's ID ability helps offset the increased cost of Prognostic Q Loop's 1 credit to install something, but still you're saving 2 clicks. Okay. I guess I understand why Q Loop is in the deck. A lot of targets to install, and you might as well install them because it gives you tempo. Spin Doctor and a blank remote created by the Corp. Rene already has the Knob Curry Imp combo. Why are there no tokens on Imp though? Was Imp just used twice? Looks like it must have been. One of those times it was used to trash Chiashi, which is rough. Corp didn't purge, did they? No, I'm not seeing any purges. Corp installs a piece, or a new card behind the remote they made on the previous turn, puts a piece of ice in front of R&D and an upgrade on HQ. Rene the Fearless runs into HQ, says, I don't care about your upgrade. What is this, a Mwanza grid? What would Jinteki place on a naked HQ? Knobcree, of course, feeding tokens onto Imp infinitely as long as the run is successful. Sees a clearinghouse. Can't trash it though because the card on HQ was a Cyberdex virus suite. Meaning that Rene lost the Imp token before they could trash Clearinghouse. Corp's got to be feeling pretty good about that. Corp has a lot of money. Subliminal messaging. Hansei review. Now they have to trash a card from HQ every time they Hansei review. But they get to choose the card is trash. That's trash. So presumably they're getting rid of cards they don't need anyway. Up to 24 credits. Rene is actually quite poor here. Has paperclip in the bin, 2 paperclips. No ability to use them, though. Renee clicks for 2 credits, draws a card, has to sign. Oh, they're going for it. An overclock run into HQ. This makes a certain amount of sense. This is probably to trash the Cyberdex virus suite so they can also trigger their ID ability. That really set them back, the virus suite, because they didn't get their ID ability trigger. Q-Loop installs another imp, but it's gonna lose its tokens when... Yeah, I don't know if installing the imp was the right call there. Anyway, getting into HQ, sees a clearinghouse, trashes that with imp, accesses the virus Cyberdex virus suite, loses both the tokens, but does trash Cyberdex with a combination of overclock money as well as real money. No, sorry, just overclock money. Cyberdex only costs 1 credit to trash. Yeah, I don't know. Don't you wait to install the second imp there? You're seeing the cards with Prognostic Q-Loop. Those cards aren't going anywhere. But okay. Running right back into HQ on the next turn. The Corp previously drew 2 cards and installed a card in an unprotected remote. We get to see an Obokata, which is trashed using imp into archives. Not really where the Corp wants it to be, but Spin Doctor will allow them to recur it. Renee is still very low on credits, but is still able to function like this as long as there aren't ice in front of servers. It doesn't matter. Renee will continue to get forward tempo by knob currying imp tokens and triggering his ID ability. Poemu going to slowly generate some revenue as well. Renee's going to get there eventually if the Corp doesn't do something. There's a lot of open servers here that the Corp would need to protect. They have a ton of money, 25 credits, but it seems like they can't really do anything with it. A double draw, though, and an install of a new piece of ice in front of HQ perhaps is the protection that they need to finally shut this Renee machine down, at least for the time being. Renee clicks up for a few credits and Shore gambles, and ends their turn by putting Rozeki into play. Corp continuing to gain money from subliminal messaging, gains even more with hedge fund. Installs another card in a new remote and it advances it once. Could it be that Urtica asset that we saw earlier? I'm much more a fan of Gene Splicer, but Urtica doesn't need to be advanced to be painful. Botchless comes into play on the ice in front of HQ. We know that the Corp runs Chiashi, and they have plenty of money to res a Chiashi. So Botchless would need 3 virus tokens. Perhaps wisely, Renee decides to run server 3, the face down card. Puts a token on imp and sees a Spin Doctor in server 3, trashes it with the imp token. But now we have the double threat. Knobkree and Friday Chip are going to be enough to populate both imps with all the tokens needed. So 2 cards a turn now can be trashed. And now that Renee finally had enough money and time to install Liberated Account, they're no longer going to be poor. Another Hansei review used by Jinteki. They have so much money. Card in server 4 is advanced again. Spin Doctor popped to shuffle Chiashi. Into R&D. But nothing else. Not even the Obokata. Bizarre. What would motivate the corp to not want to shuffle the Obokata in? That almost signifies that they want the runner to steal it. Perhaps it's a neurospike strategy. However, Renee is disincentivized to run into archives due to the Cyberdex suite. Now that there are 3 tokens on Botulus, Renee runs HQ. There's no res on the ice in front of HQ. Sees a gene splicer. Renee just going to trash that for a single credit. Doesn't even bother using the imp token. Uses Prognostic Q Loop to install Hippo. Oh man, I never even thought about it like that. You can use Prognostic Q Loop during any paid ability window. You don't necessarily even have to be doing a run. Spin Doctor resed. 2 cards are on. New piece of ice in front of HQ. And the unadvanced card in server 2 is advanced once. Renee, I've had worse, is probably just trying to get a few cards in hand, knows that eventually they're probably going to run into some kind of trap. We've already seen Gene Splicer. Gene Splicer can't do any damage though unless it's advanced, but there are 2 cards on the table that are advanced, so it could be prepping, maybe looking into the not so distant future when he'll need more cards in hand. This is risky. This is risky. Dirty laundering into HQ. 1 snare would end the game right now. Engram Flush is the ice on the outermost part of HQ. Low res cost, high strength makes that a little frustrating to trash with Hippo, if that is the game plan. It'll be 6 credits from Black Orchestra to even get there, though, which Renee does have. And with Botulus with 4 tokens on the innermost piece of ice, I'd have to say, as a runner, you'd feel pretty safe doing that. Indeed. Dropping down to 5 credits, using Hippo to destroy the Engram Flush. The next card is another Engram Flush. I'm not sure why that wasn't resed earlier. Prognostic Q Loop used to install another Hippo. Botulus is going to break through that, and then more than likely... Well, but Hippo can't be used again, because Hippo only, its triggering window is only the first time you break all subroutines on the outermost piece of ice during a run each turn. That trigger has already happened. That happened when Renee broke all of the subroutines on the outermost Engram Flush. So he won't be able to actually trash this second Engram Flush till this Next turn. Goes ahead and breaks Engram, though, with Botulus. Accessing HQ, sees the punitive counterstrike, and we now know why the Corp has wanted so much money. And indeed, they wanted Rene to steal this Obokata. Once Rene steals this Obokata and spends the 4 net damage to do so, the Corp could have easily just punitived him. But, due to Imp, Corp loses that punitive counterstrike. They do have a Spin Doctor still in play, which means they can recur that if needed. But they might also run more than one copy of punitive. It's a little bit of a dance happening right now. I think Rene's caught on. He knows that it's going to be a punitive kill deck, but he hasn't stolen any agendas. The Corp isn't really in a position to win the game, but neither is he. But I think the game is in his hands. It's up to Rene to make the right decisions to navigate this. If he does, I don't think there's much the Corp can do to stop him. At least not with the present board state. However, if Rene slips up, steals something when he shouldn't, drops too low on credits, well, really at this point there's no way he can contest the Corp's credits, so it's probably just going to be steals something he shouldn't. And then he could be in big trouble if there's a punitive available. Anyway, he does go back into HQ on his next turn, after installing a DJ Fenris, to Cambridge more cards back into his hand, which is going to be a very good counter to net damage in general. The grinding down of your deck is essentially delayed by 1 card per card added by Steve Cambridge. Now here's a tricky situation. We're accessing bacterial programming, but I don't believe you can imp this. It has to be stolen, because there's no window in which you're accessing it for imp to fire. Bacterial programming is indeed stolen. It's going to give the Corp the chance to look at the top 7 cards in R&D. It's a pretty nice effect. Top 7 cards of R&D, you can add any of them you want into HQ, rearrange them back onto R&D any way you want. More than likely, this is going to be money cards and or punitive cards and or archive memories to pull back the punitive. Now, Rene's in a bad spot. If the Corp has access to 2 punitive cards and 2 clicks to use them, the Corp wins. And I would have to guess that indeed the Corp does have access to those cards, just based off of bacterial programming's draw. I think this is the right call from Rene. Rene goes right back into HQ. I would even potentially trash this Engram flush with Hippo. No, we're not going to do that. But he needs to get into HQ and either trash the archive memories or trash the punitive, because otherwise he's lost. He goes in, sees an Obokata, trashes the Obokata. Now, funnily enough, there are enough points in archives that if he had the ability to steal them, he would win the game, but he would somehow need 8 cards in hand to do so, which he does not have. And it's tough, because even though Rene had all of these resources available to him, he's staring death in the face now with his last click. I think he should have trashed the engram flush and ran in again in a desperate attempt to trash the last punitive. But he clicks for a credit, passes it over to the Corp. Now we'll have to see whether or not the Corp was bluffing, or whether they actually do have the ability to punitive twice. Spin Doctor is used to shuffle one Obokata and one punitive into R&D. Ah, that's bad luck. That's very bad luck. Apparently, their hope was to shuffle the punitive back into R&D and potentially top deck it. My guess is they either didn't get it or they didn't have access to a second punitive. So instead, they take the consolation prize of simply icing R&D and HQ. Back over to Renee. Renee is probably very happy to just install Liberated and take clicks for credits, having been so close to just dying. The Corp really turns on a pin here, changes their game plan, and is just icing up everything like a blockade. 2 pieces of ice, additional pieces of ice on the remote, and another piece of ice in front of HQ. It really seems like they want to tax Renee and keep him out of the central servers, incentivizing that run into archives, saying, come on, steal this Obokata, steal this Obokata. All I want to do is punitive you. Renee runs HQ, passes the outermost piece of ice, but bumps into an Anansi. Now they do have an MK Ultra in the bin, so they have enough, and they have enough money to break the Anansi. So Anansi is going to be safe. Botulus, of course, is going to break Engram Flush for nothing. They're getting into HQ and seeing something that will probably either be stolen, imped. No, I mean, that's pretty much the only 2 options, right? Stolen or imped. But he's going into HQ with only 3 cards, which means that Obokata's steals are not really an option. You can just imp Obokata, so it's probably not a big deal. If he steals another bacterial programming... Oh, but Steve Campridge fires. So actually he did end the run into HQ with 4 cards. Or rather, by the time he was accessing cards in HQ, he had 4 cards. Accesses a Neurospike. Which is only good if you're scoring the agenda. It's kind of like a reverse punitive in a way. Of course, Renee's going to trash that with Imp. He then runs into R&D, and a DNA tracker is rezzed. It's going to be quite pricey to break that with Black Orchestra. 9 credits. Putting Renee back down to 2. Now again though, if Renee can steal a bacterial programming, he would have another click to run archives and steal the Obokata. I think that's his plan. Something else that I haven't been mentioning, but I feel like is a very good move on the side of the Corp. You will notice they're only rezzing the inside pieces of ice, and that's not an accident. They're doing that purposefully so that the ice that they res can't be hippoed. Because this ice isn't cheap. DNA Tracker is 8, Anansi is 8. They can't afford to res this and then just have it lost to hippo. Especially because there's 2 more hippos in the game. Anyway, Renee runs this server over here as his last click. Turns out it was just a Spin Doctor. Spin Doctor puts a Neurospike and the last Obokata protocol, or rather the last Obokata protocol that was in archives, back into R&D. And then on their turn, they triple advanced the card in server 2. A curious move. That could be a 5-3, in which case they might Neurospike immediately after scoring the 5-3. What would be even better if that was an Obokata protocol, so that if it puts Renee in a catch-22 position, either they have to score the Obokata and then deal with a punitive, or they have to let the Obokata be scored and deal with the potential Neurospike, maybe even a double Neurospike. Oh, that's rough. A Dirty Laundry run into the open remote reveals an NGO front, which means that Renee loses the Dirty Laundry money, as well as the 2-credit investment. Back over to the corpse side, another advancement of the card in server 2 shows it to be a bacterial programming. Again, they're going to get to look at the top 7 cards, add any of them to HQ, and rearrange them on R&D any way they want. Now, are we going to see the double Neurospike? Here's Neurospike 1. There's Neurospike 2. Indeed. Yeah, so you can definitely see the strength of this deck. Now, Renee had some tough decisions to make, definitely. One thing, though, that I don't know if I 100% liked was that they left archives with these face-down cards. I think maybe they could have contested that a little bit to prevent Restoring Humanity from getting the free money each turn. But that really wasn't what won Restoring Humanity the game. And if Renee did that, they'd lose their virus tokens to Cyberdeck's Virus Suite. So really that wasn't as important as maybe I feel like it is. I think it just bothered me that Renee was just leaving these face downs in here. But perhaps the tempo loss would have been too much. Getting the imp engine back up and running would have been too frustrating. But was there a turn when he used all 3 of these imps? I don't think you needed 3 imps at any point, and that's fine. He just had them installed so that they were there if they were needed. But yeah, I guess the extra credit that Restoring Humanity was getting from their ID ability wasn't really what won them the game. What won them the game was this interesting catch-22 situation where either, like we described it earlier, either the runner steals an agenda and gets nuked with punitive, or the corp just scores it and double Neurospikes for 6 net damage. Now, we can't really blame Renee for not playing this perfectly, because we have the advantage of hindsight. But I would have to say, looking at this, I think the way you play against this is you keep all your I've had worses in hand. Because Neurospike has to happen in 2 different windows, 2 different clicks. And if the corp Neurospikes you the first time and triggers one of your I've had worses, you're safe. Because the second Neuro Spike is immediately going to have 3 more cards that it has to chew through. But that would certainly be kind of a thing you would have to very purposefully think of and choose to do. Well, you know, actually, I've Had Worse was one of the last 2 cards that the runner had in hand. So maybe that was what they were trying to do. They used this one earlier and then chose to hold on to this other I've Had Worse. So there were, what, 5 cards in HQ? And you're going to hit 3 of them. So you have a 1 in 5 chance, then a 1 in 4 chance, then a 1 in 3 chance. So you have to fail all of those chances successively. And I'm not a mathematician, and unfortunately I cannot figure out the odds of that. Because it's not a 3 in 5 chance. It's a 1 in 5, and then that has to fail. And then 1 in 4, and then that has to fail. I think you can do that by multiplying them, right? You take 1 in 5 times 1 over 4 times... I'm probably just making this up. Anyway, only if all of those percentages failed, all those ratios failed, does the corp win. So keeping even just that one I've Had Worse in hand at least gave Renee a pretty good fighting chance. Unfortunately, though, as luck would have it, it didn't happen. And, yeah, they just died. Would have been a very different game if the I've Had Worse was hit first. Oh my goodness, is this the only matchup we're going to see anymore? Just Cambridge and Renee. Cambridge and Renee all the way down. That's okay, though. Alright, Cambridge already has a penny shaver with 4 credits on it. NBN controlling the message, protecting their assets with that 4 trace to tag. We already see a Spin Doctor, a Maryland campaign, a Mumbad virtual tour, and a Lily Lockwell. When you res Lily Lockwell, draw 3 cards, remove 1 tag, search R&D for an operation, reveal it, shuffle the rest of R&D, add their operation to the top of R&D. What a strange ability. We'll see how that's used here in this deck. Cambridge took their penny shaver money, but it wasn't enough. Hard-hitting news still sweeps in. Actually, that was on the turn before this. What really happened was Cambridge already had the 4 tags, and then Predictive Planogram was used to help the Corp bounce back a bit, drawing the 3 cards and gaining the 3 credits. However, HQ is completely open, very ripe for a diversion of funds run, which is exactly what happens. Cambridge gets in there, steals 5 credits. Doesn't get much better than that for diversion of funds. Goes ahead and runs into HQ again, sees a Bologna, steals that, paying the 5 credits to do so. Still generating even more money on Penny Shaver, hits a pop-up window. Passes the turn back over to the Corp. He still has those 4 tags. And is just saying, I don't care about your tags. Go ahead. The Corp doubles down on the hard-hitting news, increasing the trace strength to 7, meaning that Cambridge is probably 100% stuck with these tags. He would have to somehow get 16 credits and 8 clicks to manually remove them. He goes back into HQ, steals an AR enhanced security. Might as well. At this point, he has to just run blazingly fast. Runs into HQ, sees a pop-up window, runs into R&D, sees a new card. If he can somehow trash a boom, that would be pretty good. He can't stop the consulting visit, though. On his last click, he installs a tapeworm. But why? Corp doesn't even have 5 credits. Tapeworm really isn't doing him any good. And I feel like his chances of succeeding long-term are not good. We do know the Corp had a pop-up window, so one of these 2 pieces of ice they just installed, one on R&D, one on HQ, one of them is probably a pop-up window, and then a new card installed in server 5. Oh my goodness, are we actually shaking these tags? I think we are. Diesel draws 3 penny shaver money taken, and then 2 tags are shaken. That's a real head scratcher for me. Apparently, in spite of having 8 tags, Cambridge's plan really is to get rid of them. And that makes the tapeworm installation make a little more sense. He knows it's going to take him a bit of time to do this. During the time that this happens, the Corp is going to gain some money. So he might as well make a bit of money passively while the Corp is catching up. Diversion of funds into HQ unfortunately whiffs as ping, a simple ping, is rezzed, keeping the runner out. Ooh, that's rough. And the runner actually concedes. So what happened is, so they took another tag from ping, bounced out of the server, didn't get their diversion of funds run. So they were up to 6 tags, and then on the Corp's turn, they play Market Forces. Runner loses 3 credits for each tag he or she has. And then you gain 1 credit for each credit lost. So basically, you know, I don't want to pick on people, but I kind of feel like that was, what do they say, turnabout is fair play? And the runner was a little upset that they were then getting diversion of funds, making that a verb. Because essentially all the money that, not all of it, but 7 credits in their pool went over to the Corp. The Corp is like, ha! How does it feel when I steal your money? There's a certain justice in that. Anyway, I think at that point, our runner friend was done. Kind of probably saw that there was a pretty big hole that they were in. It was going to be a lot to get out of it. I was surprised that they started shaking those tags, though. I suppose maybe that would have worked if Market Forces hadn't been played. Maybe. I mean, they were up 4 points, so they had time to do that. It's just I think it was the wrong call even still, though, because at best they would have gotten rid of those tags in another 2 turns had they not been market forces, and assuming, of course, they're gaining money from Tapworm. If this diversion of funds had been successful and it hadn't been bounced by ping, I think they would have been A-okay. But a combination of market forces and the ping keeping the runner out was really what did it. Now we're fairly far into this one. At least these are new IDs, so we'll stick. What is happening in this game? Hive mind? I didn't think hive mind was legal. I'll spell it right eventually. Thought Order and Chaos was banned. Is it not? Anyway, Simulchip. Botulus. Pop-up window. Why? A Botulus on a pop-up window. That's interesting. Orbital superiority scored. What's happening here? Conduit. Conduit on a progenitor. Interesting. Conduit being the medium replacement. But on top of a progenitor, it makes it keep its token even during a purge. Knobcree feeding more viruses onto things. Not very many breakers here, but all the bin breakers in the heap. Amakua doing the lion's share of work as far as being the primary breaker right now. Both sides of the fence are poor. 4 credits versus 7. A lot of board state from NBN though. And they are Reality Plus, which means they're going to gain money every time the runner is tagged from things like ping. Max runs HQ, hits the ping, broken with Amakua, but does take a tag. Corp takes 2 credits from that tag, effectively allowing them to res ping for free. But it's only going to be a credit tax from Max. But Max does have to shake the tag, so it's an upfront credit tax plus a click and 2 credits from the tag. They were bluffing a bit with their supposedly low credit count though, because the card in server 1 was an NGO front, putting them back up to 15. It's replaced by another card, which is advanced once. Now Max has a lot of viruses, but no money. Fermenter here will be able to be used at some point to pull back a decent amount of money. Successful run on HQ puts a token on Hive Mind. Very clever. Very clever. Fermenter treated as if it had an additional 3 credits. Or sorry, 3 virus tokens. Popped for 12 credits. Max is back in this money-wise. Amakua up to 4. strength, but Hive Mind is giving it another 3. So it's effectively a 7 strength Amakua. Pretty scary. Especially with this conduit, which will access several cards. Oh my goodness, actually, what, 5 extra cards? Since Hive Mind's tokens are treated as if they were on all virus cards. However, Max sees a funhouse and decides that they don't want anything to do with that. So instead of taking the tag, they let it end the run. And they install a tranquilizer on it, which comes into play with an extra token due to Cookbook. The Corp responds by triple advancing the card that was in server 1, which is a Better Citizen program. The first time the runner plays a run event or installs an icebreaker program each turn, you may give the runner 1 tag. So, if the bin breakers come out to play, the Corp can give the runner a tag. A tag. Interestingly, the runner runs R&D with Conduit. Funhouse is rezzed, and Max decides to jack out since Tranquilizer will just de-res Funhouse at the beginning of the next turn if the Corp doesn't purge. Well, that's huge. It's extremely huge. I don't know if trashing the Amakua was the right thing to do. Okay, so what happened here is Max ran the remote, ran into a ping. Ping gave Max a tag. Keegan Lane was the card in server 1. Keegan Lane can remove a tag to trash 1 program. So the Amakua was trash, but I think the better choice would have either been the Progenitor or the Hive Mind. The Amakua just comes back. I understand that the Amakua would have been able to, theoretically, if you get rid of the Amakua, you're thinking, oh, there's no way Max can get into the servers, but the problem is, the Amakua is reinstalled off of a simul chip. With another simul chip here, yeah, see, if you had targeted the Hive Mind instead, or even, I think the Progenitor is probably the right call, because then you get both the Progenitor and the Conduit, and even if you simul chip the Conduit back, it's not going to have the Progenitor in front of it. Anyway, game's moving pretty quick. Max decides to go into HQ. Gets through the ping fairly easily with Amakua. Accesses a Keegan Lane. Goes ahead and trashes that. Doesn't want to run into that Keegan Lane combo again. We see a Punitive. I'm not sure when that hit the bin. Yeah. At any rate, labor rights use to shuffle a couple of cards back into the stack. Trash the top 3 cards of your stack, but if you have no cards in your stack, it doesn't matter. Draw 1 card. But I think this might have been done in the wrong order because Max immediately triggers at the beginning of her next turn and trashes the 2 cards that were added into the stack. She now rebirthed into Kamala, which makes sense. She has plenty of virus tokens to trash some of this ice. Or, ice, what am I saying? Trash some of these accessed cards. But maybe this isn't looking perfect for her. The tranquilizer on the funhouse is frustrating for the Corp, but the botulus on the pop-up window doesn't mean a whole lot. After all, the Corp still gains a credit every time the runner encounters this piece of ice. Max doesn't have a ton of money, and as long as the Corp can keep purging this hive mind, a lot of these virus cards are going to be kept in check. Since there's no imp or anything like that. And indeed, we just see another purge. It's a tough call, though, because even though the Corp is purging here, they only have 5 credits. Conduit run on R&D is going to see 2 cards if the Corp gets, rather if the runner gets in. Corp gains a credit off pop-up window broken by Modulus. Now we're going to see 2 cards from R&D. One is an NGO front that is trashed. Wait, are we seeing 3 cards? How do we see 3? Oh, because of the hive mind token. Knobkree fed a token onto hive mind. That's pretty good combo. Wait, we saw 3 cards, no agendas, in spite of kind of all the trouble that Max, now Kamalo, has been giving Reality Plus. They haven't scored any agendas. Whereas the Corp has managed to score 4 points. Kamala runs into HQ, sees a surveyor? Did I read that correctly? Yeah. Could have used Kamalo's ability, I think, to trash that if they really wanted to. But they would have had to spend 5 virus tokens to do it. They had 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They might not have had the Amakua token until that run ended. The labor rights. Shuffling in labor rights and 2 fermenters. Fermenter is going to be the main way they make money right now. Corbin installs a new piece of ice in front of HQ, draws a card, and takes credit. At this point, we know that there's only 1 more labor rights left in the game. As the Corp, you can start looking into the potential of overwriting some of these cards, some of this ice, to maybe potentially trash Tranquilizer, trash Botulus. The last Simulchip has been used. in order to trash Botulus and install Chisel. Wow. That was kind of a waste of resources. I understand why the runner would want to stop the corp from gaining a credit on each run on R&D, but they lost a Botulus, they lost a Simulchip, and they lost a Chisel. Just to get rid of a pop-up window. But maybe that's their plan. They do get into R&D, and they see 4 cards. We're going to go back into R&D and see another new card. Actually, 2 new cards, due to the fact that Orbital Superiority had been scored, and they get enough accesses to steal a Better Citizen program, as well as a Bologna. That's tough. Hive Mind with Conduit. That's a tough battle to fight. Tranquilizer just makes that even more difficult. Due to Hive Mind's tokens, even if Tranquilizer only had 1 or 2 tokens, it would still de-res the ice it's attached to. Can't believe Hive Mind is legal. But I guess, I thought Order and Chaos was no longer a thing. I'll have to look into that. I'm going to make a note to check that. But yeah, Hive Mind was really the backbone of this. Even if the Keegan Lane combo is pretty good. In fact, Keegan Lane behind a ping is extremely dangerous. There's almost nothing that the runner can do to stop that combo. And mid-run, no less. Ping res, Keegan Lane fired. And now I'm not going to say that it would have won them the game. But I do really feel like if the Corp had used Keegan Lane to trash the Progenitor, there would have been 1 less access from Conduit, which potentially could have changed things. The Corp was getting very close to sort of wearing their opponent down. They had no more Simulchips. Only 1 more labor rights. And I guess they could have labor righted the Simulchips back. And reinstall the Tranquilizer once it's trashed or something, but I just feel like overall there was a limit, right? They were getting to the end of the runner shenanigans, but they just weren't able to hold on till that final Conduit run. Oh well. I believe that's all it's going to be for the night. Any of you still watching, I hope you at least enjoyed somewhat. Listening to the ramblings of a very sleepy person on the internet. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in. Hope you are enjoying Netrunner and all these new cards and such as much as I am. And potentially I'll catch you in the next one. Good night.